Hey, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I explore the world of neurodiversity and musicianship. I'm your host, John Hart, along with my ukulele today, and today I'll be talking about emotional dysregulation. Each episode is broken up into a traffic-light format, where I'll share insights in the red section, improvised babble in the amber, and a recommendation you might find handy in the green. So let's head on over to the red section for more insights. All right, let's kick off with a breakdown of what emotional dysregulation actually means. Simply put, it's when emotional responses are out of sync with what's happening around us. This can lead to intense mood swings, difficulty managing emotional reactions, and even moments of feeling overwhelmed. Now that we know what emotional dysregulation is, let's talk about why it matters for us as neurodivergent musicians. Our brains are wired differently, and that means our emotional experiences can sometimes be more intense or complex. This can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it fuels creativity and allows us to create deeply moving music. But on the other, it can also make it challenging to harness those emotions effectively. Emotional dysregulation can impact the music-making process in various ways. It might affect the ability to focus during rehearsals, lead to writer's block, or even strain relationships with bandmates or collaborators. The struggle is real, but acknowledging it is the first step towards finding ways to channel it into our music. Now, obviously, this is just on the music side, but emotional dysregulation can happen in all areas of life. If you have a partner, it can happen there. If you have friends, family, if you're a parent, it can happen in all angles. It can happen if you're out there, when you're gigging and you're on touring and all sorts of different things. And I'll go more into this into the improvised babble section. So now we understand why emotional dysregulation is relevant to us. Let's explore some strategies on how to navigate it effectively and integrate it into our music and life. Number one is awareness and acceptance. First things first, it's crucial to be aware of emotional states and accept them without judgment. When recognizing that emotional dysregulation is part of who we are, it becomes easier to work with rather than against it. Number two is mindful expression. Mindfulness techniques can be incredibly helpful. When feeling overwhelmed, taking a moment to ground ourselves can make a big difference. Deep breaths, meditation, or even stepping away from a challenging situation can help regain equilibrium. Number three is channeling emotions into music. One of the most beautiful aspects of being a musician is the ability to channel emotions into our art. When feeling intense emotions, we can use our music as an outlet. Whether through lyrics, melodies, or the energy put into a performance, emotions can become a driving force behind creativity. And number four is seeking support. Remember, we're not in this journey alone. It's okay to seek support from fellow musicians, friends, or even professionals who understand our unique challenges. Therapy, counseling, or support groups can provide valuable tools to navigate emotional dysregulation. And as we include these insights, venturing deep into the heart of emotional dysregulation and its poignant resonance in the lives of neurodivergent musicians, the tapestry of music flourishes when we seize emotions by the reins and wield them in our creative process. So that is it for the insights section. We're now going to go into the improvised babble with the amber. Okay, so we're now into the amber section. I'm going to go into some improvised babble. So I'm in the middle of summer holidays at the moment, and, I can feel very emotionally dysregulated. And I think the word regulated and dysregulated are really, really good terms for if people are asking, why are you so angry? Why are you so upset? Why are you so defensive? Why are you, acting like this? Or, why are you impulsively saying these things? And you can say you're out of sync, but actually it comes down to, you're feeling dysregulated. And this can be a number of things. For me, it can be, I've not had enough sleep, or I'm feeling very overwhelmed. And when we were talking about sensory overload or executive dysfunction, that can create immense amount of frustration. And then you can then get sensory overload. And then when you get everything sort of pressured on top of you, obviously there's anxiety, stress, and that can lead into all the other areas that I went into with the depression and stuff. But when you get emotional dysregulation, that can obviously heighten all the senses. It can then make things even worse. It's almost like putting a weight on top of someone, and as they're getting squashed down, everything's bleeding out, basically. And everything that's bleeding out is mistakes. And I get emotionally dysregulated when, I'm in certain situations, whether it will be a discussion, whether it would be an argument, whether it would be sensory overload. And then I'm still added, I've got internal questions going on. I've got this internal dialogue, but then you've got this external dialogue going on at the same time. And my emotional dysregulation will be, I get angry, or, and I lash out with my anger, or there will be, I'll go really, really quiet and I freeze. So I'm not able to respond. And that's because I'm not prepared. And that's when all like insecurities can come out. You're not feeling authentic. You feel like you're on the back foot. You're treading on eggshells. You're second guessing yourself. I have a tendency to, if something exciting is going on in my life, I will then shout it out to the world immediately rather than keep to myself. And that's an impulsive thing. But then the problem comes is when then people fire back questions. If they just went, that's amazing, keep going, then I would keep going. But if I'm fired back lots of sort of direct questions, really detailed questions, maybe it feels like an interview, I'm completely in the back foot and I'm not prepared. And in hindsight or preparation, I could go, yeah, I should prepare myself with these things, but sometimes you can't help that. And then that then comes down to my character and who I am. And I can't change that about myself. I can't change when I get excited about something, I share it. It's almost like, our children do it. And children do it in general. They make a painting, or they draw something, or they've done something, and they want to show their parents straight away for sort of validation, or, am I doing this right? And I think probably for me, there's sort of a mix between my upbringing. So maybe that has bled into the sort of my present self. And some people can call this needy. Some people can call this attention seeking. Some people can, you're almost, I don't see it like that really. When I have created something, I've created a new song, I want to share it. And I want them to experience it as well. It's not about getting validation or compliments or anything as well. I want them to be able to experience, like the music going on, or there's an episode that is created. So I've found some insights in what I'm doing, and I want to share it with someone. And I want them to have the same feelings. And yeah, we're all subjective. Yeah, we have all our own feelings and thoughts and views and opinions about things. But I think there's something about seeing someone else in their shoes when they've created something, when they've done something and they're proud of it. And you can't, it's very easy. It's easier to shoot someone down in flames than sometimes to give them a compliment, because I found with British tendencies as well, sarcasm and all these sort of things are kind of like this natural coping mechanism for like enlightened, positive conversations. So I veered off a little bit, but there is sort of a sense sometimes that my defensive side, the RSD starts to kick in, the negative side, the guilt, the shame, and all these sort of things start to kick in when I'm not prepared. And that's when my insecurities rear their head. And it's sort of unawareness. And I've done this a lot my whole life where, you know, I've jumped in with 2 feet, made the mistakes, and then had to sort of crawl myself out. And I've mentioned this in the past, but I think that can happen with, that's why emotional dysregulation can sort of start to appear. And it depends on what emotion that is. So if I'm frustrated and I'm unprepared, that'll be anger. But then if it's triggered an emotion that's from my upbringing, you know, maybe it's trauma related or it's other things that are related, parenting, you know, because it relates to how I was parented, that can then trigger sadness. And one thing that I have always done, you know, and I had a coaching session recently, and the one thing that I realized I've been doing unconsciously is when I'm starting to feel like I'm going into that fight or flight mode, and that fight or flight mode is for survival. It's not meant for 24/7, you know, and I know we've had lots of, you know, crazy things happen over the last few years, but that sort of heightened symptoms of anxiety and things as well. That's not our natural state. That's not our normal state. And if we're constantly living in that, that's where we're going to make ourselves ill. So when fight or flight starts to kick in, and it can happen at all areas, you know, sometimes I'm in the kitchen and then I'm preparing something, and then all members of the family will come in at once. Or, you know, it can happen in other areas where I am in the middle of teaching, you know, in a school, and someone would just walk in, or there'll be a noise that goes off, or whatever it is. And I can either sit there and I can allow these sort of emotions and feelings just to start to bubble up, and then I explode. Or I do what I've unconsciously been doing for years, is I take myself away and I go to another room, mainly the bathroom or the toilet, because you can lock the door. And the one thing that I shouldn't be doing, and I have been doing, is take my phone with me, because that's when you start. I thought it was self-soothing, but it's self-indulging, and that can actually fuel the fight and flight. So what I've got to do is just take myself to another room and, you know, and breathe, or play my guitar. And it's like an invisible SOS box. You can go into, you know, rooms, and then you focus on your breath. Now, this doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes I have to sit there and allow all these thoughts just to sort of wash over me. But most of the time, walking away to the, you know, maybe to the other people that are around you might feel like, you know, they have their emotions and feelings about that. But I think it's important. It's a visual thing of like, I'm not going to be able to give you a straight answer. I'm not going to be able to give you a comprehensive, constructive view on whatever we're talking about, because I'm not on the right state of mind. I was, but then it flared up. And it wouldn't be interesting if there was a visual thing where you could either see it on the wall where it had levels, and it would start to see these levels go up from the green to yellow to red. And once you're in the red zone, you could see that someone's in trouble, or you know, maybe in the future, like futuristic, where we have watches and it tells us all of these different stats of how we're feeling right now. And, you know, if I'm feeling dysregulated, it's in the red. But I sort of picture it like a balloon as well. If I'm breathing really slowly, that balloon's going to stay collapsed. If I breathe really fast and I keep going, that balloon's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it's going to pop. And so the only way to do that is just to walk away. But eventually, and I think if you can tell people, look, I need 5 minutes. I need time to breathe here. And it sounds like if there's a heated thing starting to build up, that other person needs it as well. Maybe if you're in an argument, I'm in an argument with children or my children or whatever it is, they also need 5 minutes. We all need 5 minutes. And then maybe we can come back. But when I come back with a response, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to solve the situation here. Especially if it's really hard things, especially if it's really deep-rooted things. And when it comes down to music, this is when you work with bandmates or when you work in rehearsals, or, there could be something where you have differences. You have different opinions about something. And then you start to feel emotionally dysregulated because everyone feels disconnected. Everybody's insecurities start to rear their head. And this is the difficult thing with humans, because we all have our sensitivities, we all have our attributes, we all have our character traits, whether it's positive or negative. It's just who we are. And I think when we're not all speaking the same language, even if, we're speaking English or whatever it is, sometimes we're not communicating it right. Or sometimes there is a sense of the unknown. It'd be like 2 first years from a degree, music degree, talking about concepts that are from a third year. They know a little bit about it, but they don't know enough to make sort of a concise, constructed conversation and decision about it. They don't have enough information. And that can get really frustrating when you have things, gaps, missing in your knowledge or life. And then it all can then become hypothetical, or it can all be very subjective of just like, no, this is the way you do it. No, this is the way you do it. And, this is how I feel about it. Or, that's okay, but this is how I feel about it. And then it can just be that tug of war. And I think that's when emotions can just really start to fly. And like with all the things that I've discussed over these last, many episodes, it all comes down to bird's eye view. And I'm constantly feeling out of sync. Since I've been going on this internal journey, I've realized I've been out of sync for a long, long time. And this is where mood swings can just fly all over the place, and managing those emotional reactions. I know they're entwined with my childhood and with my upbringing, and then all throughout my teens. And I've not had the therapy. I've not had someone sit with me in the mud, as it were, for my whole life to nurture that. And that's what obviously parents do. That's what parenting is. And then you have other leaders in your life, like teachers and coaches and, maybe therapists, and others. If you've had a rocky journey, even if you've had the smoothest journey, there are still gaps in our knowledge and our life experience. I don't know a lot of people around me who are close to me. I know a few who have gone through, my upbringing. Some other people might have gone through it in a different way. Some other people might have not gone through crises. We all went through COVID, but we all went through it in, we were at the same rocky sea with different ships. But there were some people who absolutely loved it. But there was a lot of us who struggled with it. And I think that, being aware of all of that, when our emotions rear their head, it can be like if you were pulling the anchor out of the sea that's connected to a boat, and then you pulled it all out and it had all the seaweed and it had all of this other shit attached to it. The anchor actually, it can come back up. It's almost like the emotions. It's like digging up everything. So I think when we reveal our emotions and our feelings, and they come to the surface and they can blow the top off, it drags up everything at the same time. So I think being aware of that is just like, actually, if I don't stop this now, I'm going to dig up all of that shit. And not that I've buried it, but there is a sense of that there might have been closure to everything that's happened, or an event that we've all gone through. But I think with musicians, we are sensitive, creative beings. So sometimes we've got to dig in that whale to be able to get to those sort of golden songwriting moments. But it's risky. It is risky because it's like when actors take on a role and then they've got to immerse themselves into maybe that figure for months and months and months. I know like recently that Oppenheimer came out, and I haven't watched it yet, but I know Cillian Murphy, he had to immerse himself into that role for 6 months. And this, like other characters who've played Joker and other sort of characters and events that you've got to immerse yourself in, it leaves a mark on you, which in my case and for most musicians might come out in the music. It might be amazing from the music, but is it going to do well for my family? Is it going to do well for my friends? Do I let all these emotions pour out? It might be great for my music, but I don't think it's great for other areas. And this is where just trying to regulate it. If it happens, it happens sometimes. Like if anger happens, if sadness happens, if, overwhelm, disgust, whatever it is rears its head, and I wasn't able to control it, I'm not going to beat myself up. That's self-compassion. What I'm going to try and do is just be aware of that happened and get over it as soon as possible. I've been very reactive my whole life, which has done me well of jumping into things without, jumping into things without thinking about it or planning, which has been, is not a good idea. But there are others who don't jump into anything because they're too afraid, or they haven't prepared or planned properly. So it's trying to find that happy medium. And as much as I've been reactive to things, I am now trying to get to a point where I'm a bit more proactive. So then I can have a balance between proactive and reactive. And I think that's actions, but I think that comes down to emotions and feelings as well. And that's where I can start to feel a bit more regulated. And I can have a great night's sleep. I can have conversations with people, and breathing's really, really important. Going for a walk, doing all these things, and being in nature and all that sort of stuff. But I also feel with emotions, it's like an internal dance going on inside. They're like a waltz. And, they're a mix between the light and the dark. I sort of got a picture of this man in a black suit, and then a woman in a white dress, you know, dancing together. Or, you know, it might not even be people. It might just be a black cloak and a white cloak just dancing together, or whatever it is. And they are the feelings, but they're connected together. And I remember watching the film Inside Out, the Pixar film, and all the emotions there, and joy wants to take over, and joy wants to be, you know, the main person throughout the whole film, and all the crystal balls and things. And I've mentioned this before, but you need sadness to be there with you. You need all the others, but you can't allow them to completely overtake. There needs to be a balance. And this is why I sort of feel, you know, if I had all this internal awareness, could I have prevented stuff from that happened? And the answer is no. I'm here for a reason. I'm here now doing what I'm doing for a reason. Emotions, feelings, and all. We are all the same. And we don't have to be numb to it. I'm not saying that we completely balance ourselves where we're just like, yeah, emotions. You know, it's like some people think thoughts are just thoughts. And then they go to the point where it's just like, they're not even thinking from themselves anymore, because every thought that comes to their brain, they're just like, no. Thoughts are like 1 in 1,000, you know, 1 in a million, whatever it is. And I don't know. It's interesting with emotional dysregulation, and it really crops up when you make your life super, super busy. And I've been told I run at 100 miles per hour. Or I don't tell that. I've been told I do things really, really fast. And I have consciously been trying to slow down as much as possible. And do you know what? Since I've been slowing down, other things, I've been able to see things. I've been able to see my emotions a bit more. I've been able to breathe a bit more. I've been able to take pauses in between what I say, like I'm doing now. And I think that's the only thing we can do. Try and make life a little simpler, a little bit more streamlined. Doesn't mean that we don't get to try crazy things. But if we're constantly driving at 100 miles per hour, everything will be blurry. When we slow down, we get to see the trees and all the other things. So anyway, that is it for my improvised babble. I hope you got something out of that. I think I went off on one quite a bit there, but oh well, that's what this podcast is for. And, you know, let me know what your thoughts are about emotional dysregulation. Is there one particular emotion that pops up a lot? And yeah, come and join the Facebook group, Neurodivergent Musicians, and please do share around the podcast. Yeah, and thank you so much. Yeah, so now I'm going to head on over to the green section for a quick recommendation. See you then. Okay, so we're now into the green section. I'm just going to go through a quick recommendation. One thing I try now and again is I try lots of different things to try and see if I can get my mindset right. And one thing, obviously, waking up and not checking the phone straight away. This can go up and down as much as possible. But they do say, you know, whatever you look at or whatever you consume at the start of your day will set you up for the rest of the day. So if you go onto your phone and you go through your emails, you go through your socials, and you see something that triggers your emotion, maybe it's negatively. Most of the time it's negative, because that's what our brains, so we're kind of seeing positive things. Yeah. As soon as we see something negative, we sort of connect onto it. And that's what can consume us for the rest of the day. Trying to get out to see nature as quickly as possible. So I go and clean out our bunnies every morning when I'm at home. And although that's not a walk, it's still just getting outside. I will do fitness now and again. A cold shower. If you've ever checked out Winhoff, the Iceman, there was a brilliant BBC program, and they were talking about cold showers. So you can have, a warm shower, maybe, for like 2 minutes, and then you do cold for like 15 seconds. And then the next day you up it to 30 and then 45. And the idea is to try and get to 2 minutes. I've never been able to get to 2 minutes, not yet anyway. And I've been very up and down with it. But I know when I've woken up, like, wow, I feel like shit. Cold shower or the end of it. There's lots of science behind it. I will go and check it out of what a cold shower can achieve. But one with emotional dysregulation, it doesn't completely like knock it out, but it wakes up your body so it can discard some of that negativity. I think just trying to be mindful about the small things. So if you wake up and you're like, oh, I feel like shit, I've had a bad night's sleep. Because as much as sometimes we prepare for a good night's sleep, we can end up having a bad night's sleep. I've gone to bed at 9 before, or maybe earlier at 8, and then I've had a horrible night's sleep. If I have a beer, I have a bad night's sleep. So I know alcohol can do its thing. But there's loads of different things, obviously temperature and all sorts of stuff. And sleep is a major, major thing. But I think if you wake up and you're not feeling great, then appreciating the tiniest of things. So, the fact that we can breathe, so we can just breathing, the fact that you can move around and maybe touch things and look at things that you haven't looked at for a while, because we're always thinking about the bigger things. So being mindful, basically, being present as best as possible. So there's those things. But yeah, journaling is another great one. And then obviously reading something that is positive. I've been reading a book called The Ultimate Coach. I've read a book called The Prosperous Coach. I've read another book called The Go-Giver, The Relationship Handbook. So there's lots of wonderful books out there that can give you an insight to your own being and the way we are. Because we're constantly doing, if we're not being our authentic selves, then that's where we're going to get emotionally dysregulated as well. So I hope you get something out of this episode. Keep listening to the highlights, and there might be some bonus stuff coming up soon as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.